Hello there everybody, Brandon here coming to you at the studio today, and I'm going to do a quick little video here on some technique for some clouds. And again, so this is just some of the techniques that I use myself. Maybe it'll help you out if you're having some issues painting some clouds, or maybe give you some ideas of some things you can try. So we're going to just look at doing a few different things here on, and I've literally just got a piece of paper stuck up here. This is like a resume paper, so it's not really a canvas, but it's what I want to use for just demonstrating some techniques. I can just pitch it and throw it away after that. So I've got me a piece of paper stuck up here, and we're going to create a little bit of a sky scene here. I'm going to do this with just a 3/4 inch wash brush. I'm going to do the whole thing, this whole little tutorial with just one brush. You can use a variety of different brushes of this for creating clouds. I mean, you can use, you know, flat brushes or round brushes or blender brushes, or you can even use things like fan brushes or whatever. Technique, relatively speaking, will still be about the same. So let's just dive into this. Now the first thing I'm going to do, just to give us a sky to work with here, is go into some blue. Obviously we want to do a bit of a blue sky, I guess, and a little bit of white mixed in with that to create ourselves a good starting point. Now the first thing I would say about making a sky, if you're doing a big scene that has a big sky component to it, you definitely don't want to just come up here and put a blue all the way across your canvas. You want to, especially if you have a horizon involved, you want to start up here with probably your most saturated or darkest blue, because ultimately whatever's up here is what's going to be the closest to the viewer in the foreground. But you're going to want to fade your blue down to the horizon and lighten it up. So I'm going to add more white into my mix as I get closer to my horizon, is essentially what I'm going to do. And that will create a little bit of a fade for us of what we're looking for in terms of perspective, because the sky itself, as it's getting closer to the horizon, is going to lighten up in value. Okay, so while that's giving a minute to dry, let me just go ahead and say this. So as an artist, if you're creating a scene with clouds like this, or any kind of landscape you're going to put some clouds in, the first thing you're going to have to decide to yourself is how much detail are you going to want to put into these clouds, how much time are you going to want to invest in them. And that's just a decision that you as the artist is going to have to make for your particular painting. If you want to keep it real simple and just put, you know, a single color out there to represent a cloud, and going about the rest of your painting, that's entirely up to you. If you want to spend some time in there and put some more detail in them, put some more colors in there, and work at making those clouds as realistic as possible and try to achieve some kind of realism to them, that's also perfectly okay. So you have to decide for yourself which route you're going to go with your painting in terms of how much time, detailing, effort, and color mixing you're going to be doing for your clouds. Now let's just say, for purposes of this painting, that we've got some kind of distant mountain range out there. I'm just going to drop something in just to give you an idea of perspective in terms of creating your clouds in your scene. So I'm just throwing in, just added a little red to our sky color there, just to say, hey, there is some kind of land out there on the horizon. Who knows what we got going on? We got some kind of rolling hills way off there in the distance, right? Okay, good. Now, again, you'll notice we've got a little saturated darker blue up here at the top, a little faded out, more faded blue here at the bottom. So If you wanted to keep this simple and just stick a cloud in there, you can literally just go into straight old plain white and come up in here and say, there's a cloud. Right? Okay. You just touch something in there with your brush, and the old Bob Ross happy little cloud, there's a cloud. Now, most clouds, for the most part, when you look at them, are flatter on the bottom than they are at the top. So I've created a little bit of a flatter bottom, a little fluffier top there. That's just a single color in white. We've got ourselves a cloud. If you're going for time consumption, or least amount of time consumption, doing something quick, dropping them in there, then yeah, okay, you can do that. You know, maybe we'll say there's another one over here. So again, I just went into nothing but white. I create a little fluffier top for this thing, and a little flatter bottom, and this is slightly mixing in with my blue that's underneath here, but that's okay. There's a little thinner cloud there. Now as you go into the distance, you want to make your clouds probably a little smaller, and I try to make them more the color of the horizon themselves. As clouds get further and further away, they start to disappear into that horizon color. So I'm going to make them a little thinner, flatter, smaller. In perspective, they're going to be out there. They're also going to be very much closer to the color of the horizon that you've got going on. You see how this one contrasts a lot with that blue. These right here are not standing out nearly as much. Our horizon line is a lot lighter, and the clouds are going to be much closer into that color, so they're not going to contrast as much, and they're going to be smaller in size for the most part. So you've got some distant clouds out there. We've still just used really nothing but white, okay? You get your clouds bigger, fluffier as they move forward into your foreground. Now, if you want to detail some of this stuff out a little bit, I mean, the first thing you could do, again, if you're trying to just keep it simple, is just go into a tiny, tiny touch of black to gray things out a little bit. And so instead of just using one color, now we've grayed things out a little bit, and come in here along the base of your cloud, because it's going to be mostly grayer along the base of your cloud, and then kind of work and fade that gray up into it a little bit. And you don't have to do anything specific in terms of where you take that gray color. I just like to fade it up into that white a little bit in a couple of places. And so now you've added an extra color into your cloud. You've stepped up your realism in terms of how realistic your clouds are looking. And you can do the same thing with those distant ones. You can come in there real skinny and add just a little bit of gray to the bases of those, whatever you want to do. So now if I'm going to create a bigger cloud scene in there, I normally will start with my darker color, and I like to gray my clouds out with some black and keep the blue in there as well. So I've got blue and black in the mix, and I've created a gray with that, and I come in here and I create a gray base of a big cloud area, right? So this is going to be a little flatter along the bottom, be much bigger and fluffier as it moves up to the top here. I'm still just working with this gray. So let's say I start with something like that. Now I bring in more white into this mix to start lightening things up a little bit. And most of the time it's going to be lighter on the top than it is on the bottom from where the sun's coming in. So I have lightened this value up a little bit, and as my paint brush starts to lose the paint, I can kind of work my way down in kind of small circular motions. Create a little lighter area up here, and it's started to lose paint as it's moved down. I'll get more paint on the brush and come up here again where it's got the most paint on it. I'll start up at the top, and I'm not looking for full coverage of this white paint at this point. I'm just kind of creating some shapes in here. starting from the top down, some edges that are catching the light. So there's one essential highlighting layer that I have created. Now I just come in here and I do a couple of different layers of that. And I typically brighten up my value of white each time I do it until I ultimately end up with almost a pure titanium white pass at the brightest up at the top here where I want the brightest highlights on my cloud. Where I touch in that white right along the top edge. And then again, you can kind of blend and work it down throughout the rest of your cloud. Again, not going for any kind of monotone full coverage look here. You want some areas that still have darker shadow to it. And then some areas where the cloud is catching the light. And clouds change their shape every couple of seconds out there in the sky, so you don't have to worry about creating something specific here. 5 seconds later, this thing would look different anyway. And you can continue to work and blend these colors until you're happy with the way your cloud looks, obviously. And again, I'm doing all of this with just one brush here. This is just a wash brush. I'm not doing anything fancy with multiple brushes. This is just one brush that I'm creating this cloud with. You can use multiple brushes to do a variety of things with to create more realism. You can even get real detailed out with liner brushes and do all sorts of things in there if you want. I'm trying to keep it simple, show you that you can create these kinds of looks if you want, without getting too technical with it. Alright. I would say we are well on our way to creating a pretty respectable cloud formation there in our sky, with just a couple of highlight passes. And again, we've kept our brightest whites now for the top of our cloud where our sun is hitting it. You have to keep in mind of where your light source is coming from and what effects you want to create in terms of where the sun is hitting it more and where it's not, that kind of deal. And so now we've created that look. I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's say you're going for an entirely different look of a backlit kind of cloud where the sun's on the other side. So I'm going to throw some black in here and gray this whole thing out. If the sun is on the opposite side of this cloud, the side you're viewing is for the most part going to be shaded, with exception of the edges. So I'm graying this whole cloud out on the back side of it now. And it doesn't have to be uniform gray, obviously, because the cloud will be a little thinner in some places than in others, and different amounts of light will be penetrating through there. So you can have a variety of values of gray in there and still achieve what you want to achieve. Those top edges there, I've left that brightest white for the most part to show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go into just a tad bit of yellow with our white. So I'm adding just a little bit of yellow to my titanium white mix or just a little bit of a light yellow creamy kind of glow, and we're going to put that right along the edges of our cloud itself, where it would be catching some of that light from the other side of the cloud where the sun is, giving us that backlit appearance, so to speak, where our light source is on the opposite side of what we're viewing. And this cloud would essentially be kind of glowing along the edges. So again, just a tiny little bit of yellow in with my titanium white. And now we have created ourselves essentially a cloud that the sun is on the opposite side of from us. So you could have a whole sky full of these if you want to create a backlit cloud. Alright, so I hope maybe that little quick tutorial there gave you some ideas of what you can do to create some clouds on your paintings there. Again, this is just trying to keep it very basic, very simple. And the more detail you want to add, the more passing or the more layers you'll have to add on top of it. In each pass you can change and manipulate your color values. You can make them lighter, make them darker. If you're trying to paint something that's like a sunset kind of scene on clouds, you're just going to have to bring in those oranges and reds and yellows, whatever your sunset colors are, into those clouds. So your reflection colors, instead of just being white or whatever, you just got to bring those colors in there. But anyway, again, my keys to trying to create this stuff: create your horizon with your sky. Don't just do a plain blue up there. Fade your blue down to a lighter blue on the horizon. And then if you want to keep it simple, just glob out there some whites and move on. If you're trying to create a little more realism, just start bringing in some darker shades and shade things out, create your shapes. And you can do it with one little brush if you want, or you can really get involved in here and create some photorealistic looking clouds if you want to take the time to make that happen. So until next time, happy cloud painting, everybody, and we will see you later.